S3 Graphics is not a company I think of often when I think about sound cards. Actually, come to think of it, S3 Graphics isn't really a company I ever think much about at all, but they did make some of the graphics cards of all time. However, they did make sound cards as well, which has me a bit concerned considering the last time we talked about graphics card manufacturers making sound cards. That didn't exactly go well. But this card is different, I hope. It's giving me vibes, you know? Sonic vibes. So this is a PCI sound card again, because for some reason I like torturing myself with PCI sound cards lately. But it does have FM synthesis and a wavetable, so we're gonna see what they sound like. More importantly though, I wanna use the SonicVibes to play Sonic the Hedgehog, because I think that's gonna be funny. But anyway, let's see if this thing is actually any good. Released in 1997, the S3 SonicVibes or 86C617 chip is a completely integrated audio solution for the PCI bus. If you know the history of S3, this comes as no surprise, since they were one of the first chip makers to create a graphics solution with a fully integrated single chip design with the S3 Verge. Alongside the Ensoniq audio PCI, the SonicVibes is also one of the very first PCI cards to make it to the consumer market. Interestingly, unlike other integrated audio solutions of the era, which were commonly integrated into motherboards as an audio solution, it seems the SonicVibes was only put into PCI expansion cards. Of course, if this isn't the case, let me know below, but I couldn't find any motherboards with SonicVibes chipsets. I believe the card I have here was manufactured by Aztec, and like most PCI sound cards, is unremarkable to look at. All we have is the rather large S3 chip, amplifier, and a few headers for CD audio routing. Some variations of this card can also include an additional SRAM chip for reverb effects, but Aztec has excluded that here. Under the hood, this S3 chip utilizes an OPL3 FM clone called S3 FM and includes legacy support for SB Pro, as well as a wavetable that loads either 1, 2, or 4 megabyte patches from system memory. So with the specs out of the way, what is the install experience like? For my test system today, I'm using the Dell XPS 600R, which has fantastic support for PCI sound cards that use distributed DMA. But it should be noted that the experience you have with PCI sound cards can vary quite a bit depending on your motherboard's chipset. That said, as far as Windows 98 is concerned, I'm impressed with the drivers. They detect the card and install everything you need to use in Windows and DOS applications without any fuss. The only thing a bit quirky is since the wavetable patches are loaded into system memory, there's a noticeable 20 to 30 second lag when cold booting into Windows. Just kind of sits there with the hourglass and makes you think it locked up, but eventually it loads. Outside of Windows, the card will also run on a pure DOS system with the S3Legacy.com TSR included in the driver package. We'll talk about the actual sound in a bit, but S3 should be praised on game compatibility and stability. FM, MIDI, and even the SB Pro compatible digital effects worked flawlessly in every game I tried, which is a rarity when working with PCI sound. Even games that are often troublesome with DDMA, like Duke 3D, Jill of the Jungle, and Tyrian 2000, all worked flawlessly. So for ease of use, I would give this card high marks, at least on my system. But how does it sound? I have a hard time making a judgment call on if the FM sounds this card produces are good or bad. It certainly has moments where it doesn't sound great, and I would not call it accurate by any means. However, much like the AD1816 I covered years ago, or the Certashop McFly, it feels refreshingly different even though it's flawed. While I do enjoy the sound of a legit OPL3, the weirdness of chips like this are fun to experiment with and are part of the reason why I like testing vintage sound cards. If they all sounded the same, it wouldn't be near as fun. As always, wavetables in any form are a welcome addition, and the sound of it here is not bad, just a bit middling in my opinion. There's also a weird option for downloadable samples that will load in addition to the default patches that can be enabled with a program called DLS Manager. This is referred to as InfiniPatch in the documentation, and the included samples just make MIDI files sound goofy as hell. I'm not sure the point of this, but it feels like an incomplete feature to me. Finally, the Sound Blaster Pro digital sound effects in DOS sound okay, but they seem a bit muffled, even by crunchy Sound Blaster standards. But I can't complain too much, because realistically, it's a miracle they even work at all on a PCI sound card most of the time. That is enough of my yapping though. I'd like to see what you guys think of this one. Listen to these samples and let me know in the comments. And if you appreciate these kinds of videos, please consider subscribing or joining the ranks of my patrons listed on screen now. Without further ado, let's play some Sonic on the SonicVibes, among other things.